Hey guys, I'm back again with another video. This is a follow-up to my initial KPL knife pivot lube video. I've got two knives here that I lubed with this a month ago, and I've carried this knife fairly regularly. And I've carried this knife fairly regularly. I lubed another knife, but I didn't really carry that knife, and I also don't. It was a Spyderco Shaman. I don't feel like the action of that knife is conducive to judging how well this is going to lubricate. The action is very tight on a Shaman. If you've ever handled a Shaman, and I'm talking factory, not adjusted or anything like that, just out the box, it's smooth, but it's stiff. It's more of a hydraulic action. So anyway, these knives here were lubed 1 month ago with knife pivot lube, and they've been carried. You can see this knife is a knife I've used. It's a knife that had nano oil in it before. I took the whole knife apart, cleaned the whole knife with Aegis EDCI knife care solution. Reapplied the knife pivot lube, and it's been running ever since. So let's see how it works. So it still drops free. Now there's a lot of lock bar tension, so you're not really going to be able to swing it closed, but it does. It still drops free. I was able to tighten the pivot down a little bit more than I was with the old application of nano oil, which had been in there for maybe, I don't know, 6 months or so. So it's still working. Maybe on this knife it's better in the sense that I was able to tighten the pivot down a little bit more. Not that that was necessary, but you know, for whatever it's worth. So that's that knife. This knife here is my Spyderco Super Blue Calypso Junior. This knife was brand new. I took it out the box, used it for a week or two. I've carried this knife more than I've carried this knife. So A, it was new. B, there was no lube ever in here other than if they put something in at the factory, and I put the lube in here. Now this is how the action is on this knife. Sometimes it'll fall shut, sometimes it won't. Again, the knife was pretty much brand new when I got it, so if that's the lube or the break-in, who knows. But it is still smooth. It does drop down. So again, it is still working. Would I say that nano oil was better in this knife? I don't know, because nano oil was never in here. Would I say nano oil was better overall? For me, I would say yes, and I'll get into that in a second. One thing a buddy said to me is he said he preferred the knife pivot lube because nano oil had some flaws or concerns for him. And he said that the nano oil attracted dirt and grit and grime. Well, this has had nothing but knife pivot lube in it, and I believe you can see in there that is pocket lint and everything starting to build up. Is it the end of the world? Does it impact the action? Still flings out, still drops shut. It works fine. But anything that you put in your pivot that's greasy or oily is going to attract dust, dirt, grime, and grit. So I don't know that that's necessarily a relevant concern. Now, back to why I have all this nano oil out here and why I said that for me, I think that nano oil is a better product. This is $10. Absolutely a good buy. From what I've seen, I've heard a few things here and there, things I can't reproduce. So if I can't show you, I'm not going to tell you. So $10, absolutely a good buy. This a little bit smaller than the smaller version of this, but the smaller version of this is I think it's $15, $17, somewhere in that ballpark. So you're spending about 50% more money on the nano oil of a relatively equivalent size than you are on this knife pivot lube, which is, obviously cheaper. But the thing is, you can see here, I have 3 nano oil products right here, and there are others. I have 1 knife pivot lube product here. There's only 1 weight. They say that this is 17 weight, or I guess I should say he, because it's a one guy company from what I know. He says it's 17 weight. If you go back to my other video, you can see here, as a matter of fact, no, I won't even make you wait. You can see here that this is 10 weight nano oil. I'm going to put just a drop of it right here. And then I will put an equivalent drop of Pivot Lube on the other side. So we'll let it kind of pool up a little bit. It's about the same size drop. And now let's look at how each of these run down the knife blade. So I believe you can see that there. You can see that this is supposed to be 17 weight. This is supposed to be 10 weight. But that knife Pivot Lube, even if you shake it some, is running more. Oops, there we go. Is running more than the 10 weight nano oil. So I don't know. It's stated as being 17 weight, but what I can see here visually, it must not be 17 weight on the same scale, because this is 10 weight on whatever scale nano oil uses, which I'm sure the weight system is standard across the board like oil, like motor oil. But you can see that this 17 weight knife Pivot Lube runs more than the 10 weight nano oil. And you can continue to see it run. Let's hold it up for a second, just so we can kind of just let it run its course. I'll let it run down closer to the edge of the blade. And you can see there, the knife Pivot Lube has almost run all the way down the face of the blade. The 10 weight nano oil is pretty much in the same boat. Again, this is supposedly 17 weight. This is 10 weight. Unless the scales are different, something's not exactly right there with the weights. So that's one of my concerns. It is pretty thin, which is good. Is good in a sense, because when you apply it in a knife like this that you can't take apart, this knife here is riveted together. You can't see that other rivet too well because of that clip, but you can't take this knife apart. So you need something that's going to really seep in there and penetrate. The knife Pivot Lube over here will do that. It does that well. Now with that comes the caveat that a little bit goes a long way. As you can see, that stuff is going to just run wherever you put it. So you only want to use a little bit, which again, depending on your philosophy, that's great, because you're getting a little bit less. It's cheaper, but maybe you're having to use less because you can't put a lot in there because it's going to run everywhere. So that's another thing. My concern is if I want to put this someplace like, and I hope I can get this to show here. Let's see. All right. I think that's about as close to focused as I'm going to get. There, you can see that little bump right there. If you're not familiar, and I know 90% of you watching this are, so just ignore this part. That is the detent ball. If you really want to improve the smoothness of your knife, put some lube on that detent. And you can see here where there's a hole and there's a track that detent rides on. Put some oil, some lube, some whatever on that detent ball or on that track, and it will really smooth your knife out. Now, if you put that knife Pivot Lube on there, it's going to run all over the place. If you put this on there, it's not going to work either. I don't prefer 10 weight, but that's where the benefit of nano oil comes in, because nano oil also comes in this 85 weight, which, as you can see, is much more viscous. And this stuff, when you put a drop down, it's going to stay put. Whereas something like this 10 weight nano oil, as you can see, is much less viscous, and it's going to run a lot more. And this right here, even more yet. So still, just the different weights of the oils is still going to play a factor, in my opinion. Now, again, you know, we're splitting hairs. Obviously, there were comments last video. Why do you need oil? Why do you need lube? I use motor oil. I use WD-40. I run my knife dry. That's fine. All of that is fine. There's no right or wrong way to run your knife. If you want to run it dry, run it dry. If you want to use WD-40, use WD-40. If you want to use one of these higher end oils meant for knives, use one of these higher end oils meant for knives. That's totally your call. This is just looking at these objects in front of me that some of us do happen to use, and giving you an objective take on these different items here. So still on the higher end of the scale, getting back to the nano oil, there is this lithium this not lithium, this PTFE grease. So you can see here, it tells you a little bit about it down here. But yeah, lithium. Well, it tells you a little bit about it down here, so you can pause that and read it. And what I use this for is sometimes I want to kind of make my own mix of grease. I don't really like the 85. I don't really like the 10. I want something in between, or I want something a little bit thicker than the 85, which I don't think I've ever done that, but usually it's something in between. I can take this 10 weight nano oil here, and I can mix it with this grease to the consistency I prefer and use it for whatever my application is. So again, this nano oil is just more versatile. It has more applications, in my opinion, than the knife pivot lube does, because it only comes in the one weight. Now, again, as I said, I have not talked to the gentleman. I don't know what he has in store. He may have other weights in store, but as of today, I'm still going to say nano oil is the choice. And as much as I've stated the quantity you get here and the cost of this, the fact that this product for the same amount, or relatively the same amount, this bottle is a little bit smaller than the step down from this. I think the step down from this is 15 mils, and I think this is 11 or 12 mils, something like that. This is a half-ounce bottle, by the way. But what I will say is I've had these bottles for a very, very long time, and you can see here that I've had them so long, the labels have peeled and they're starting to turn yellow, and I still have, I'd say over a half a bottle of 85 and a half a bottle of the 10 weight. So, you know, yeah, it costs a little bit more money, but how much are you really going to need to buy? So those are my thoughts on the product. That's my one month follow-up. I'll do another follow-up at 6 months, because like I said, I've run knives with nano oil in it for a year, maybe more, and they've still been fairly smooth. All I do is freshen it up a little bit from time to time whenever I think about it, which, like I said, that might be 8 months to a year, somewhere in that ballpark. So I'll follow up with you guys again in 6 months and let you know how things are. I appreciate you guys watching. Remember, a lazy man carries a dull knife.